It's almost
I just turned
almost
down
like
the recording, but go ahead. So,
mhm.
yeah, so that's what they were very quiet, but there is a little bit of a hum to them. So,
Yeah, it's almost like like a melody almost. It's just really interesting. So yeah, yeah. How have you been? It's been about a year since we last connected.
yeah, well, I had spent a lot of time. I already did three parts of the five-part series. I don't know if you saw the other stories. Um,
I didn't know, but I'd love to see him if you can remember to if you might wouldn't mind sending him my way, that'd be great.
yeah, well, they're at the top of my website, so they're easy to find. I did the overall story, setting up the issues. Then I did one with General Motors because Ford, Toyota, and Stellantis didn't want to talk about it. So I just did GM. And then I just did one with the tier ones with Yazaki and Hitachi. And they talked about how they're using everything. But in the first story, where I interviewed Natalie Chiminko from MEDC and a bunch of other folks, then they were, pointing to the various steps and that you guys, MMTC, are the evaluators of the technology because well, yeah, must have talked to 20 or 25 people. And the issues are always the small guys don't have the R&D departments. They don't have a clue. They know they need to get plugged into Industry 4.0, but that's all
Mm,
they know. And
yeah,
so Natalie pointed to you guys as being the evaluator of technologies where, depending on what the manufacturer is doing, you can recommend that they do this, that, or the other, whether it's a service or a product or whatever, so that they can experiment with them. I mean, that $25,000 matching thing that they do, or the company has to come up with the 50 and the state gives them 25 back, doesn't really go very far. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to talk about, and then of course I'll see you next Monday on the tour. But I
yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
talk about the evaluation process. I mean, I've got a lot of thoughts having now researched this for a year. Hard to believe, right?
yeah.
I'm also running two media groups and a software company on the side, so it's not like I was just this is all I had to focus on. But it's been an interesting journey. But let's get back to I'm recording this so I don't have to take notes. So, how do you evaluate for small players, the tier twos and maybe even the threes, when they come to you and say, "Gosh, I know I needed to get plugged into Industry 4.0, but I don't know much about it. What can you do to help me?" How do you play that?
Yeah, so we start with a baseline assessment. Uh, we have questions. It's kind of like almost like a doctor diagnosing a patient. We have a baseline of questions that we will ask the client. We'll talk to them, kind of get a feel for where they are, identify what are some of the strengths and then the gaps based on that. Then in addition to that, there's conversations. It's a conversational style assessment, but we make sure we hit on those points, and it's also trying to ascertain what is the client also hoping to get. What is their strategy, what are their goals, how are they hoping that advances in their plant and technology could help them, talking about some of the pain points and the pressure points that the business owner or the plant manager or whoever's in charge is experiencing. So based on all of that information, then we can get an idea for what are the best recommendations for implementing any kind of further technology, or even sometimes we find that the problems that the person's experiencing or the company's experiencing actually go back first to foundational things. First, we need to maybe work on the lean manufacturing and streamline process. Maybe there's some issues with quality, so let's help them get their foundation and that in order, and then let's just come in, and then we can talk about technology next. So first and foremost, we just have to really find out, like, where is the company, meet them where they are, and then go from there.
And so, I mean, I looked at your stats on your website over what you've done in the past year. Do you have any idea? I mean, I'm sure you guys do things other than helping smaller companies evaluate Industry 4.0, but I mean, how much of that does that percentage of time, is that a big factor or where does that stand?
It's a fair amount. Major, the major things that we do, like we have different, I guess if you want to call them revenue streams or product lines. The things that we do the most of in our company are in lean manufacturing, so like Six Sigma, and quality is the second area. That's a huge one for us. Leadership is the third major bucket. So, and then I'd say, the Industry 4.0 is then layered on top of all those items, right? Because you can use technology to also help with all those different areas that I just mentioned. So I would say that the amount of conversations and assessments so when it just comes to like, okay, how many pure assessments are we doing? And if you want to measure it like that, we're doing almost a couple hundred a year. But then to be honest, like all those other conversations and classes and consulting projects we're doing will also involve some of the technology conversation as a component.
Also, do you have you been working off a list? For instance, let's say it's a stamping plant, a very small stamping plant. Of course, that may be
Mm-hmm.
not a good example. I'm not sure if that'd be a tier two or probably be a tier two. And so they're saying, well, we're hearing from our tier ones, we got to get plugged in. Do you have like specific things you can talk to them, each manufacturer, whether they're making screws or fasteners or stamping things or whatever the case may be? Do you have a specific list of things that you go to that you've matched to those types of manufacturers?
It's usually based on the person or the consultant's expertise, because again, every client is so different, right? Sometimes they come to the table thinking that they need something, and we might say, no, this is, you need to actually go back to the basics. A stamping plant is very different than someone who's going to be making fasteners, or so it's really client dependent. The size of the company is a huge variable, so it's not like it's not a one size fits all.
And the ones that are really grappling for help, are they typically the tier twos and threes? Is that who comes to you? Obviously, the tier ones have R&D departments and tend to be very large companies. For instance, Hitachi is about a $70 billion company and Yazaki is about a $20 billion company. So clearly they can handle it on their own. But what do you
Mhm.
see most of coming to you for help? I don't mean
Yeah,
specific on what they make, but tier two, tier three, that sort of thing.
everything. And it's really we focus on the small and medium size. So for us, it's not, we don't bucket it by tier two, tier three so much, but we bucket it by but we look at the smalls and mediums. So our sweet spot is companies that fall up to 500 folks. We find that the majority of our clients fall between 25 and 250 employees.
And then in terms of revenues, I mean, if that's something you can't spin off the top of your head, that's fine. I can get that later. But
It
go ahead.
it's varied. Again, it varies depending on that size, because that 500 person company. So some might be a $5 million company, another a 10 million. Another could be a 15 to 25. So it's really dependent. But again, to your point, uh, each company, and depending on their revenue, are going to have different capabilities, right, and abilities to solve some of their problems versus others.
And when they come to you, typically, are they, other than knowing the name Industry 4.0 and they're being pressured to move into that, do they understand what Industry 4.0 is?
Some, I'd say majority do. I think if you're in manufacturing, we've gotten to the point where I'd say probably the majority of people have at least heard it referenced and they have an idea. The level of familiarity, again, runs the entire spectrum. Some have fully embraced it and they're implementing it. Others, no, it's just technology, but don't maybe realize that there's all these different facets and components to Industry 4.0, such as augmented reality, Internet of Things. I don't know that,
Well, there's
not
like
a,
15 of them. There's a lot of them. So,
yeah.
yeah.
So the sophistication again is just varied on the owner or the company.
And in some cases, I've had people tell me that they actually, before they do anything, need some kind of software update, that their software is so far behind anyway, that that's the baseline they have to start with. Have you run into that?
So again, it's very variable on the company. So a good example is, you might have one company who just has a short, it could be small, and they just have a shortage of workforce. And for them, implementing a cobot could help by taking the spot of what might be a low skilled worker, and then they could supplement the shortage or the gap in their workforce with that. Another company might have issues with all the different assembly lines, and if you use a software system and you implement that, you can start measuring the data, you can aggregate that, some of the trends that you're seeing, and then you can use that to make business decisions. So it's not necessarily software as like the first step. Again, it's just kind of dependent on what is the issue. But that's where the consultants can come in and advise. I mean, you make a really good point. I think sometimes companies think they may need, oh, I need this piece of equipment, or I need to do this because that's what they're hearing or that's what they're reading. And then once you actually get on the ground, you realize, no, that might be actually like step 3 or 4, but they've got to do another 1 and 2 different things first before they get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, really, the bulk of the manufacturers, there's 12,000 in the state, are little guys, or in your case, small to medium guys.
Right.
And they could be in any industry. I mean, it's not just autos, obviously, because we do lots of different manufacturing. But I think the problems are pretty similar across the spectrum, are they not?
They're similar. Yeah, you see a lot of similarities. And to your point, depending on the tiers and the size of the company, you can start to see similarities amongst those groups. But yeah, if you're in furniture or if you're medical devices or if you're in automotive, then again, there's going to be some nuances to the type of product or thing that you're making.
Sure. Then how long have you been developing your expertise in Industry 4.0? How many years? I know well before you came, but do you have any idea when this all started? I know you've only been there, what, a year or so, right?
Yeah, I don't have an exact number, but it's been definitely many years, many years. I'd have to get back to you on probably how long we've been involved in it, but yeah, it's been quite a while.
And then again, I don't want to keep beating this too much, but I mean, is there of all the problems that you seem to identify with manufacturers in general in Michigan, are there common ones like 2 or 3 or 4 that many of them are dealing with besides all the other specialty kinds of things they may be dealing with? Is there anything in particular that jumps to mind?
And do you mean as it pertains to Industry 4.0 or just in general?
Well, yeah, Industry 4.0, what is a common theme you run into with these folks that maybe there's a couple of things that they're lacking or looking at or wanting to do, that sort of thing? Trying to bore in on this a little bit more.
I think the first thing is just general awareness about what I think, to take a step back, I think when you walk into a company, a lot of people are not sure of all the different options of kind of the technology that they can implement.
Right.
I think it'd be a little overwhelming. So that's probably one of the big things, or a company just not knowing what they don't know.
Right.
So it's just there's a lot on the menu to choose from, or things that you can do. And so when you come in and you're able to talk about those different components of Industry 4.0, right? Additive manufacturing, robots, cobots, AI is a piece of that, and breaking down, first of all, what are the different things out there? But then again, I think it's going back to that original conversation. What are the issues the company's experiencing? And then figuring out what is the solution, right? If you think about a doctor, okay, what are your symptoms? What are the issues? Let's get to the root cause. And this is the medicine that you can use, or this is the prescription, or this is the course of action you can take to solve for that. So I think that's really the biggest thing, is people understanding, okay, taking a step back, this is my issue. And then realizing, okay, these are a couple of options that we can implement to address those.
Then the other issue that comes up is, and I've heard it from a number of people. I mean, even though the MEDC has done 2 rounds of these $25,000 matching grants, what I'm hearing is that's just barely scratching the surface. And I know that's not something that Chimiko could do much about because she can only work with what the legislature gives her. But
Hmm.
um, how much money do you think it would take to really do the job that you want to do? This is where we can lobby the legislature a little
Yeah.
bit. Because some people have said, well, we're sitting on, not we, but the state is sitting on a $9 billion surplus. Some have said, gosh, if we took $1 billion of that and invested into the manufacturing segment, it would it would revolutionize the manufacturing segment. I don't know whether the dollar figure you would agree with, but does it need a lot more money to really pull this off?
Of course, you can always add more money. What that dollar figure is, I don't know exactly. I mean, to your point earlier, when you've got 12,000 plus manufacturers and understanding, I mean, that gets pretty expensive, right? When you start talking about the capital expenditures for many of those folks. Um, but to your point, $3 million, which is the original grant, at 50,000, well, really, it's
Well,
25,000 a
well, it
pop.
turned into 6 million. They rolled it over, so there was like 6 million. But go ahead.
Well,
So
$1,000 a year though per appropriation.
yeah,
For the
right, yeah.
yeah. So it does. It just makes a small dent. So it's really, I don't have that answer for you in terms of the dollar amount, but sure, more money could definitely make a bigger dent. That's for sure.
Okay, and how many folks do you? I know you've got your MMTC offices all over the state, with the primary ones in Plymouth. But how many folks do you have that you would call these experts working with the manufacturers, roughly?
So statewide, our organization is about 75 people, but that also includes our administrative support. So, of the folks that we actually have out in the field who are meeting with people, so you got 13, 5, 7. So you got about probably between 20 and 25 experts that are out there.
And getting back to the wish list thing, is that
Actually,
enough? Is that enough to cover the state, or would you like to hire more if you could?
If right now we are able to meet the demand that we have from the market, but we, would love to grow. We'd love to continue to work with more manufacturers. So as we start to get more info out there about our organization and the demand grows, yeah, we definitely would love to be able to meet that demand. But right now, so far, we've been able to handle the capacity pretty well.
And is there a big demand? Do you have people waiting to talk to your experts and get your advice?
Yeah, we do. We work very closely with like the Michigan Works offices, and so they promote our services and other group. We've been able to remain very steady, and we've monitored our capacity and we've done a really good job of meeting both the demand and that supply side of our staff.
Yeah. One of the things that was suggested was that maybe the state get involved in the sense of, I'm not sure if I want the right terminology, but let's just say when you discover there are certain common hardware products that these folks may need, that the state could stockpile those and then do a sort of a lend lease kind of thing, lend it to the various manufacturers for them to try for 90 days to see if it really works. Are you doing anything along those lines?
So I have some opinions on that. So first of all, just to take a step back, at MMTC, we do have a couple of cobots and some different pieces of equipment that we can allow a company to test and use for a short period of time, a try it before you buy it type of model.
Right.
In terms of the state getting involved in a business model like that, I would I would not recommend that, just based on the fact that, who's the state entity that's going to do the purchasing? Where do they warehouse that equipment? How do they handle? I mean, to me, I don't know that the state government has that expertise and capacity. I don't really see that being their space to play in. I think that would go back to what I think would make more sense is identifying technology partners, companies and groups such as ourselves, where maybe you work out an agreement where equipment can be consigned right out from those groups. I don't think it's a good place for the government to be involved in. I think it's you have to work with people in there because yeah, I think just between the delay that would take in purchasing, having been in government, and the contracts and going out for bids. And I think by the time you get into that, it would take a really long time, and the management of it would be very cumbersome.
Well, and then of course, every 4 years, in theory, the governor changes, and then the priorities may or may not change. So
Hmm.
I think Whitmer's been pretty supportive, all things considered. I don't know whether I would say Snyder was. Would you? You were, of course, not there. We can talk off the record. Do you think that Governor Snyder was pretty supportive of this when he was governor? And this is not for attribution. I just want your thoughts.
Yeah, I can't say because I wasn't around for that. So yeah, I'm not able to speak on that point. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And again, we're just you and I chatting. You think Whitmer's been pretty supportive of this?
So far, again, it's, considering I think both administrations, so I mean, I can't speak specifically to the Industry 4.0, but what I would say is that MMTC, we get some of our funding from federal dollars. We get some of our funding through the state, through the MEDC, and then the rest of it's client fees. And we've been fortunate enough for over several decades to get continued support through the MSF board for that state funding piece through both sides of the aisle. So I would say when it comes to manufacturing support, we've been very fortunate to have a good relationship with many different administrations, and so I think that's been a good thing. Michigans have been very behind manufacturing.
Yeah, great. So we're coming towards the end of our time, and if I have any more questions, I can ask you on Monday. But is there anything that you want to talk about that I may not have asked about, that you want to point out, or you want to lobby for, or anything like that?
No, I mean, we're just really excited. We're Industry 4.0 is like any technology, right? Is continuing to advance at exponential rates. The stuff that's coming out. So we're working really hard to stay abreast of the new innovation and technologies that's coming out. We're looking at our coursework and our consulting services that we offer. We're looking at what can be done now in the AI space. That's a big topic of conversation. So how do we educate our factories and our consumers on what does that mean for manufacturing? We're offering additional things in additive manufacturing and courses on that. So our goal is just to stay on top of the new trends and technology that continues to come out of the industry, and make sure that our customers are able to get access to that information and technology.
All right. Great. So I have the other interview from a year ago, so I'll combine the two, and then once I'll start writing probably next week sometime after I do the tour. But yeah, so not you personally, but MMTC will be the fourth story in the segment. Um, I'll send you the first three just so you can get a feel for what everybody else has been saying and what they're doing. And then
Okay.
the fifth one's going to be with the Manufacturing Growth Alliance, Automation Alley, LTU, Rocket Labs, all those folks that are doing the educational part, trying to explain this is what you need to do. And I imagine a lot of those groups then push clients your way, right? Is that how that works?
Yeah, those are all those folks you just mentioned are really important partners, and we work together and we refer back and forth. So yeah, those are all great people to be talking to.
Yeah, so then I'll have all five, and that'll pretty much attack it. I was hoping that MEDC would share these with the legislators, but politicians, I don't know what the politicians are doing these days other than fighting constantly. It's just amazing. Even on the national level, the state level, it's like two warring camps, and
You know,
nothing is getting done, and people are getting real fed up with it. They want to throw all the bums out, so.
yeah, yeah. We got to keep working ahead, plugging ahead, making some progress. Yeah,
It's a challenge. God, politicians. Anyway, I won't go into that. That's
that's a whole nother.
my theory is they'd sell their mother to get elected, so I'm not a big friend of theirs. But anyway, yeah, good. But in manufacturing, yeah, I mean, when I was working my way through college, I spent 3 years in an auto supplier plant in Grand Rapids, and then went to Grand Rapids Junior College part-time and worked in a factory full-time. So that's where I started off. And then, of course, since then, I've covered Boeing. I've covered Chrysler. I've covered Silicon Valley. I've covered all sorts of manufacturing around the country from my days when I was a newspaper guy. So back in
Yeah.
the old life, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
You've had quite the career, it sounds like.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm manufacturing RS. I mean, I'm doing it pretty well. So
Yeah.
yeah, this is probably my last big series that I'm going to work on before I kind of slow down a bit. I'm 71 years old now,
Oh,
so
wow. Oh, yeah. You don't seem it. That's cool.
yeah. So it's my last hurrah here because I get tired of just being a manager and not doing any writing. So I forced myself to do this just so I could remember what it was like.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
Time.
look forward to seeing you on Monday and doing the tour and then seeing the subsequent articles.
Yeah, well, thanks. All right, thanks, Ingrid, and be sure to drive safely there. So,
Will do. Will do. Have a good weekend.
thanks, you too.
Bye.
All right, bye bye.